As they work through their divorce, Ethan accuses Olivia of lying and claims she created the issues. Welcome to Plathville. According to Liza Esquibia's exclusive preview of the 7th season finale, Ethan Plath tells his ex-wife Olivia, "I am not arguing with you over the details of the divorce." For the first time in a year and a half, Ethan and Olivia Plath are sharing a seat. The exes meet up to discuss the last stages of their divorce procedures in the season 7 finale of Welcome to Plathville, which airs on September 30th. However, the talk immediately becomes tense as the two realize they are not on the same page. People has an exclusive first look at the episode. Ethan says, "Look, I have everything lined up. Let's do it and move on. I'm not fighting with you over the specifics of the divorce." Following a 4-month separation and 5 years of a turbulent marriage, the couple jointly filed for divorce in February 2024. Olivia says, "You can at least be courteous about asking." "We can, and I'm not arguing with you either, but you made me wait a year and a half." According to Ethan, he has been courteous in every way. He continues, "I'm not sorry for any of that." Olivia acknowledges in her confessional that she knew Ethan was not in a good mood as soon as she laid eyes on him, but she hoped their chemistry would change. "I should know by now that I shouldn't go into it expecting anything," she says. Ethan returns to the table and makes one more request of Olivia. He says, "Will you please stop publicly disparaging and defaming my family for things that you may or may not believe to be true?" Olivia responds, "No, it's not slander." Olivia continues to argue that talking about my life and experiences is not slander, despite Ethan's insistence that it is. Before comparing Olivia to his brother Micah's girlfriend, Veronica Peters, Ethan argues that anyone can say they experience anything, but if it's factually not true, it is slander. "I thought Olivia was more tactful. I thought, she wouldn't just outright lie about things like Veronica. And I see them both the same now. They're both liars." Olivia seems to be coming closer and closer to what Veronica is, and that's a sad reality, he says to cameras. While some of it may have been unpleasant, it is not nearly as bad as she makes it out to be. It's also 100% true that the majority of the problems that she wants to talk about today of her experience were also created by her. "It's infuriating to me because what she walked into, she claims it's awful," he continues as the video ends. But Olivia Plath, star of Welcome to Plathville, says she is leaving the show and is thankful for this journey. Ahead of the final show she will ever film, the TLC celebrity took stock of her journey. In a contemplative social media post detailing her experience with the 7 seasons of the reality series, Olivia Plath, star of Welcome to Plathville, announced that she is leaving the TLC program. Olivia posted a message to her admirers on her Instagram stories on Tuesday, September 30th, inviting them to ask questions. She started her long post by saying, "Today is the last scene/episode of Welcome to Plathville that I will ever film. I was a sheltered, newly married, fundy kid when the show started and had no idea who I was. The last 7 years have had their share of challenges, and there were definitely times when I didn't think I'd see the other side, but I'm here to prove myself wrong. When I look back at the last 7 years of my life on this show, I feel so many emotions," Olivia went on. "In many ways, I grew up with all of you watching and supporting me." When Welcome to Plathville debuted in 2019, Olivia was married to Ethan Plath, the oldest son of Kim and Barry Plath. The couple filed for divorce jointly in February 2024, but they haven't finalized the official separation yet. Olivia stated in her article that she wouldn't be where she is today if things had gone differently and that she was grateful for this journey and all that it taught me. She also noted that this chapter closing brings some sadness. Olivia clarified that Tuesday's program was filmed a while ago. "It sickens me to see violence, hatred, and dysfunction presented as entertainment," she said, adding, "I have worked hard since then to get out of my contract, and succeeded. I have not only tried to distance myself from hate and bullying, but I have also reported harmful behavior and tried to stand up for what is right." Olivia asked supporters for questions as she concluded the update, stating that although she has an NDA, She will answer everything that I can and be as transparent as possible. Olivia has only made a few phone calls with Ethan's brother Micah Plath's, now ex-girlfriend, Veronica in Season 7 of Welcome to Plathville. However, a teaser clip from the finale showed Olivia and Ethan meeting in person to talk about their ongoing divorce, and Ethan warned her to stop disparaging his family. But the Plath family's farmhouse was bathed in a warm glow as the late afternoon sun stretched golden rays across Cairo, Georgia. The air inside the farmhouse was thick with silence, not heat or dust, and for once, not even the youngest children were running around. Everyone had been called into the living room for what Kim and Barry Plath called a family talk. Isaac and the smaller children fidgeted anxiously, feeling the tension in the room but not quite realizing its weight, while the older children, Ethan, Micah, Mariah, and Lydia, sat to one side, their faces already suspicious, knowing from experience that family conversations seldom ended in laughter. Kim put her hands together and spoke in a steady yet gentle tone. Your dad and I have been praying a lot lately, kids, and we've been asking ourselves, is this really God's plan for us to do this? Beside her, Barry nodded, his tone uncharacteristically solemn. But now that we see some of you choosing different paths, we have to ask, were we following God's plan or our own? We built this life for you all, apart from the outside world, because we thought it was the best way to keep you safe, to raise you in God's light. The chamber echoed with the weight of the words. Mariah leaned forward, her voice shaky but determined, her dark eyes flickering with defiance and hope. So, you're saying that perhaps God didn't intend for us to be so alone? Perhaps God wants us to live, to see the world, to make our own decisions. Kim took a deep breath. Although she had defended their way of life as indisputable and sacred for years, even she was unable to deny the flaws that were beginning to appear in their once perfect image. She muttered, I don't know, Mariah. Perhaps God wanted us to have more faith in Him rather than just control everything around us. Part of him wanted to shout, I told you so, but instead he glanced at his father, seeking something, an admission, a glimmer of change. Ethan moved in his seat, his mouth tense. He had struggled the most against his parents' regulations. Ethan whispered, Dad, do you regret the way you raised us? Barry's eyes sparkled, and after a long silence, he finally spoke, his voice breaking. I admit that I didn't listen enough, not to God, not to you kids. I may have been afraid, but fear isn't faith. I thought I was protecting you. The room became silent. With tears in her eyes, Lydia, the obedient daughter, put her hands together. Perhaps God has a greater purpose than following the law. Perhaps He wants us to love one another regardless of the decisions we make. Kim gave her daughter a gentle smile for the first time, but there was still pain in her eyes. You might be right, Lydia, she said. Micah, who is typically silent in important conversations, spoke out. You constantly assured us that God had a purpose for everything, but perhaps that purpose was never to keep us stuck, but rather to help us discover Him, even in the midst of suffering, freedom, or mistakes, and perhaps He wanted us to grow by living. His comments weighed down on the family like a blanket, simultaneously comforting and unnerving. It's hard to accept, Kim said, wiping away her tears, but I can't shake this feeling that we confused our plan with His. And maybe God's plan is giving us a second chance, to rebuild, not with walls, but with bridges, Barry said, taking her hand. The kids looked at each other, and for once, there was a shaky sense of hope, and they weren't on opposing sides of a battleground with their parents. Ethan's voice pierced the silence, raw with years of fury, but hope was not the same as healing. If God's plan is truly at play here, you must acknowledge that it may look different for each of us, for Micah, Lydia, Mariah, and me. You can no longer force it. Barry tightened his grip on Kim's hand as she lowered her head, saying, We can't promise we'll always understand, but we'll try. Isaac leaned forward and said, So, does this mean things will change? Like, really change? The smallest children, who were too little to understand the full meaning of the talk, stared around with wide eyes. We hope so, son. We don't know exactly what it will look like, but maybe that's the point. Maybe faith means walking into the unknown, trusting God to guide us, even if it feels scary. Barry nodded slightly. Silence in the Plath household felt wide and welcoming for the first time in a long time, as if it were the prelude to something fresh. Later that evening, Ethan joined Mariah, who was standing outside beneath the stars with her arms crossed and the cool Georgia air enveloping her, both of them staring up at the same sky. Ethan questioned, "You think they really mean it?" "I don't know. But if they're finally asking themselves if this was really God's plan, then maybe, just maybe, it's the beginning of something better," Mariah said, shrugging, but with a slight smile tugging at her lips. The night continued, unsure but full of possibilities, while the crickets chirped. The question continued to reverberate in the hearts of the Plath family. Is this the true plan of God? But the cicadas hummed, filling the air with a restless buzz, as if they knew something dramatic was about to happen. Olivia stood near the wooden fence, her arms crossed tightly against her chest, while Ethan stood a few steps away, his hands stuffed deep into his pockets, his jaw clenched. The Georgia sun was dipping low in the sky, casting golden rays over the peaceful Plath family farm. Ethan had been caught between his love for Olivia and his allegiance to his parents for weeks, but now that invisible tug-of-war had finally brought them face to face, with no more room to hide, after Olivia had made it clear that she wanted to live a life free from the rigid traditions of the Plath family. Olivia's voice was sharp but trembling at the edges as she said, "You don't understand, Ethan. I married you, not your family. And yet, every decision we try to make together feels like I have to fight against a whole army of opinions. Your parents don't respect me, and you keep expecting me to just swallow that and move on. And you don't understand me, Olivia. This is my family. It's not as simple as walking away. They raised me, they built my world. You want me to cut them off like they mean nothing, and I can't do that," Ethan said, his eyes flickering with sorrow. The weight of years of love, frustration, and unsaid words lingered in the air like storm clouds ready to explode, and the ensuing quiet was so thick that even the cicadas appeared to pause. Olivia said, "Ethan, I'm not asking you to cut them off. I'm asking you to choose us. I need to know I come first. I can't keep being the outsider in my own marriage." Her eyes briefly softened, but her body remained tight. "And I need to know you're not trying to erase who I am. I grew up in that world, Olivia. It may not be perfect, but it's part of me. You fell in love with me because of who I am, not in spite of it," Ethan said, taking a step closer, his voice low and almost begging. Ethan continued to cling to the roots of his upbringing, which Olivia felt were suffocating them both, while Olivia turned away, her eyes watering. For years, Olivia felt as though her heart was on a battlefield, fighting not only for love but also for survival. She desired freedom, a life filled with laughter and exploration. You two don't see it, do you? You're fighting for the same thing. You just want to feel heard. Olivia, you want to feel like Ethan has your back. Ethan, you want to keep your family without losing your wife. Why can't you stop fighting each other and start fighting for each other?" said Micah, Ethan's younger brother, who had been quietly watching from the porch. The words struck them like a hammer, and Olivia turned back to face Ethan, and for the first time that night, their eyes locked without accusation. Beneath the rubble, there was love, but there was also hurt. "Maybe I haven't done a good job of showing you that you're my priority. Maybe I've been scared of losing both you and them at the same time. But if it comes down to it, Olivia, I don't want to lose you," Ethan said, letting out a deep sigh and taking a cautious step toward her. "I don't want to lose you either, Ethan. But I can't keep fighting your battles for you. If we're going to make this work, you have to stand beside me. Not behind your family. Not in the middle. Beside me." Olivia shed tears, but she chose to let them fall as evidence of how important this fight was. Ethan finally reached out and placed his hand over hers as the wind grew stronger and the tall grass around them began to rustle. It wasn't a miracle cure, and the wounds didn't go away right away, but for the first time in months, they weren't on opposing sides of a conflict. Instead, they were standing together, prepared to face whatever lay ahead. The battle was not yet over. But tonight Olivia and Ethan had taken the first step toward peace, and that one step was nothing short of a miracle in Plathville, where family drama frequently exploded into chaos. Micah smiled a little, knowingly, from the porch. The farm seemed quieter now, as if the earth itself had sighed in relief. But today, however, something different lingered in the air, something like reckoning. Season 5 had been relentless, a roller coaster of emotions that had pulled each family member into storms they never imagined facing. The morning sun crept softly through the old farmhouse windows, casting long shadows across the polished wooden floors of the Plath family home. The air was thick with tension, a familiar presence in the house that once seemed full of laughter and innocence. Their parents, Kim and Barry, stood close to the stove, avoiding eye contact, the silence between them more tangible than the morning sunlight. Lydia sat at the small kitchen table, her hands tightly wrapped around a mug of lukewarm tea, her eyes, normally bright and curious, clouded with uncertainty. Ethan paced slowly, each step deliberate, heavy with unsaid words. "We've been avoiding this for too long," Micah said in a low, firm voice that broke through the silence. Lydia looked up, startled by the seriousness in his tone. "It's tearing us apart," he added, "and if we don't face it, I don't know if we can ever go back to pretending everything's okay." This was the first emotional earthquake of the day. The first time in years that she had been confronted so openly and directly. Kim's hands shook as she grabbed the counter, and she said, "Micah, what are you talking about?" Her words hung in the air like delicate glass, ready to break at the first hint of contact. "Dad, Mom, we need to be honest with ourselves. We can't keep living in this bubble. Things are changing, and if we don't change with them, we're going to lose each other." Micah glanced at each of them in turn, but Barry ducked his eyes and instead stared at a spot on the floor, the lines in his face growing deeper. "I've been scared," Lydia said, her fingers making invisible patterns on the table. "Scared that if I say what I feel, if I tell you what I really think, you'll hate me. Or worse, you'll stop loving me." For a moment, the room was quiet, save for the creak of the old farmhouse settling every now and then. Her voice was steady but soft, bearing the weight of her own repressed emotions. "I've felt that too," Ethan said, his voice breaking, his face crumpled, a tempest of relief and hurt raging behind his eyes. "Every time I try to speak up, I feel like I'm betraying someone, even when all I want is for us to understand each other." "I never wanted to hurt you," Kim mumbled. "I just wanted to protect you. I thought we were doing the right thing." Her lips quivered, and she started crying for the first time. With his hands grasping the counter edge so hard that his knuckles became white, Barry finally spoke, his deep voice shaky. "We've made mistakes," he said, "but everything we did out of love. Even if it didn't feel like it. I've been blind to the pain around me, and I'm sorry. We're all broken," Lydia said, her voice shaking with vulnerability. "But maybe we can start to fix it. If we try together." The room seemed to hold its breath, and then, as if the tension had reached a breaking point, Lydia leaned forward, tears now flowing freely, and reached for Ethan's hand. Micah let out a slow breath, a weight lifted from his shoulders, and looked at his younger siblings, at the parents he had long feared and loved, and felt the stirrings of something he hadn't felt in years. Connection. It was a flimsy hope, one that could break at the slightest misstep, but in that moment, it was enough. "I never realized how much everyone is hurting here. I thought I knew, but I didn't. I was so angry, so quick to judge," Olivia, Ethan's ex-girlfriend, said in a voice barely above a whisper during a late afternoon conversation in the sunroom. Olivia had stopped by, drawn deeper than she had ever imagined into the family drama, and she and Lydia sat together quietly at first, the tension thick like honey. "It's complicated," Lydia said, looking at her with astonishment at the sincerity and nodding slowly. "But it helps when someone actually listens, even if it's someone who used to be on the outside." The family's barriers of pride and resentment started to come down in that sun-drenched chamber as the walls of pride and resentment gave way to something far more difficult to establish: trust. Tears came again, this time tears of empathy and compassion. The most heartbreaking moment came as twilight set. Kim was carrying a letter from one of the children, written years ago but never revealed, and it was full of love, frustration, and a need for connection. She read it out loud, her voice breaking. "I love you, Mom and Dad. I must, however, live my own life. I have to learn from my mistakes. One day, I hope you realize that you won't lose me if you let me go." It indicates that you're giving me the opportunity to discover who I am. Even the clock seemed to freeze as the room fell silent once more. Barry's eyes glistened, and Lydia's cries broke the silence as she gave her mother a strong hug. The words were straightforward but impactful, piercing through years of unsaid tension. Something had changed as the Plath family sat around the dinner table that evening. The disagreements and the scars had not entirely healed, but for the first time in a long time, there was a tenuous calm, a belief that love, despite its messiness and complexity, might endure. The Plath family understood that perhaps, just possibly, Season 5 had taught them the most crucial lesson of all, that emotional honesty, despite its suffering, was the secret to genuine connection. They were still crying, and their hearts were still vulnerable. The farmhouse was bathed in a golden glow as the sun sank over Plathville, and although shadows danced over the walls, there was light within, brightness that came from vulnerability, bravery, and the silent promise that no matter how shattered they had been, they could start afresh. Hi everyone, welcome to my channel. My name is Mina, and I hope you're having a great day. Please remember to subscribe to my channel if you enjoy the video.